Welcome everyone to yet another culture chat. We are so honored that you took the time out of your day to be here with us. It means the world to us to be able to build and be part of such a community, be part of this knowledge sharing, the support with all of you. My name is Nathan Hall. I'm coming to you live from the traditional, unceded, unsurrendered territory of the Algonquin and Anishinaabe people, better known as Ottawa. If this is your first culture chat, we are honored that you were able to make it out. These sessions are focused on our holistic professional development. We cover topics like resume building, investing, mental health, physical health, all these things that are vital for us to live successful and fulfilling lives. So please feel free to introduce yourselves in the chat coming from if you would like. Apart from these sessions, I also want to tell you about our check-ins. So we have these check-ins 2 times a month. So these are virtual meetup groups for racialized professionals to provide space for us to connect, share stories, offer support, and network. And we've discovered that community is such a pivotal part of the healing process. Did you know that? Did you know the community was essential for our healing, for our growth, for our development? So these aren't just things that we do in isolation. We don't just read a book and then we are better, right? We need to be in community. We need to be connecting with others. It's so vital for our well-being. So a big part of how we can navigate and thrive in the face of racism, systemic barriers, discrimination, and so forth is to be in community. So that's why we have these spaces. So we share the link in the chat for you to register for those. We'd love to have you come out. We'd love to see and connect with you. We also have, our regular emails that we send out. So if you're not part of our mailing list, we have the subscription in there. Please feel free to subscribe so you stay up to date with the things that we do and the events that we have going on. So today, we're not doing a presentation. There's no PowerPoint today. This is a culture chat in every sense of the word, right? So things have changed so much, especially over the past 4 years, how we connect, how we work. We're different people. Like a lot of us are just so busy doing what we're doing. We don't take enough time to just pause and think, who am I? Who have I become? Where am I going? What do I want to be doing with my life, my career? And if we're able to think through those things, we end up hitting another wall because it's like, oh, how do I actually get to where I want to go? How do I actually be who I want to be? Right? So it's just hard thing after hard thing. And so this is a big, heavy topic that we're trying to talk about here today. But guess what? I brought in a big, heavy hitter for us to have this chat with. All right. To ask some of these questions. So today's guest is a change maker, a creator, communicator, media personality. You might recognize him from the TV show Bachelor in Paradise. He was one of the bachelors, right? you might you might have seen him on The Drive, on ET Canada. When he's not on the screen or working the red carpets, he's running Jones and Jones Group, helping brands ensure their communication, their marketing programming. He's someone who wears a lot of hats. He connects with a lot of people. He understands branding, as in how do we show up? Who are we? Whether we're talking about big corporations or as individuals, it's still a hard question to answer. So I thought you would be the perfect person for us to talk to today to see if we can start to unpack some of these tough questions. So, Culture Check family, please give it up for Jesse Jones.
Oh man, Mr. Mr. Hall, man. I gotta say, man, thank you for having me on this. I think what you all are building with Culture Check and Culture Chats is an amazing thing, And I love your energy and I love your spirit. Thank you for setting the context to that and for the introduction, man. I'm humbled and honored to be here. Man. It's a dope conversation.
Absolutely. Thank you for joining us here today. So, why don't we just get started?
Yeah, man.
I mean, I kind of said who you are, but like, who are you? Like, tell us your story. How did you get here? What's your story?
Yeah, I think my story really begins with ancestry, man. So my background, I was born in here in Canada. I'll get to kind of where I was born and how I ended up in the, greater Toronto area and now just in Eastern Ontario, but we'll kind of get to all that. But my background is Jamaican. My parents, Denise and Alan Jones, met in Jamaica as trained actors. They met in the theater. My mother had come out to the University of Windsor to do school, and then went back to Jamaica and met my father. They've always been around production and theater and creating experiences. And that's where they met and had a vision for a company called Jones and Jones, which would essentially be an entertainment company, marketing and branding. They had this vision in Jamaica. They moved and immigrated to Canada. After aunts of mine had also done the same. I think we all have similar stories. If our parents come from elsewhere, there's this road that is paved up that allows our parents to make the jump too. And that jump at that time, such a you're leaving where you are and everything to go to this place called Canada for opportunity. But really, like anyway, so I say all of this to set the tone for kind of where I am now and what we're talking about now, why it's all so important.
Mm.
They immigrate to Canada. My father starts out in as his first career in Canada, sales with pharmaceutical. His first territory that they give him, just coming into Canada, is Northern Ontario. So Kapuskasing, Timmins, Sudbury, North Bay, all that. So our my parents land in Sudbury and they have their first son. And so I was born in Sudbury. My brother Jeremy was also born there, but we quickly ended up moving to the Toronto area. But I say all this because, Jones and Jones was formed in Sudbury. It started collaborating with groups like the Afro-Caribbean organizations. And at that time in the 80s, there were handfuls of families that were from Afro-Caribbean backgrounds. And so that was kind of foundational in terms of starting Jones and Jones. My parents would then make the trek to Toronto to put on their first productions, which were theater shows at that time. And those theater shows were really about creating experiences for Afro-Caribbeans in the Toronto area at that time, reminding them of home. So they would come to these shows because they remember growing up seeing stuff like this. And now they're like, whoa, we're in Canada and this is here too. And that's how the community started to grow in terms of, there is a business out here that is making its way representing us and creating a thing that brings us together. Those theater productions ended up turning into live concerts and live events. Again, the community is now hearing and coming out because, we have a place to gather. Similar to culture chats, we have a place to gather. I'm growing up in this. So I got some of my earliest public speaking opportunities in the theater, right? Being in these plays as a kid, remembering lines, interacting with adults. This type of stuff was happening just because it was in my household. I was seeing business run. I was seeing connection with community happen. I was seeing people genuinely and real time being affected by the fact that they felt seen and heard. This is well before 2020, right? and the change that's kind of happened with all of that. So I preface this when you ask who am I
Mm.
have to start back to say, shouts out to my Auntie Carmen, who was the first of my dad's family to kind of come into Canada and set some roots, and literally was the person who then said, you sister, you brother, you, and brought everybody over and was signing off for them so that the Jones family was able to kind of start doing its thing.
Yeah.
I grew up in a household that that I saw real time representation and connection happening for our community. I was born in Canada, and just feel like, to be able to see those things, it kind of gave me a roadmap to, all right, here's this entity that is able to connect worlds and connect people. I start growing up in that, making my way through high school, uh, you know, constantly seeing this business operating like right behind me. I then have this passion for marketing, because I guess I'm seeing it, right? But I have this passion to learn it outside of what I'm seeing. So I end up applying for university in Ottawa. Brings me out to Ottawa. I, experienced that, graduate with from communications at Ottawa U, and then start making my way, through life and through the industry, starting in Ottawa after graduation, and then going back into Toronto, where I really started kind of cutting my teeth. But I know we'll get into those details. But when you ask who am I think I'm a product of my environment. I'm a product of entrepreneurs who, from an Afro-Caribbean background, uh, were steering me into professions, not entrepreneurship. They were like, go be the lawyer, go be the doctor. And I understand why. All our families,
Mm.
I get it. But it was interesting to have them try to steer me that way when every single day they were showing me something
Yeah.
completely different, which was understanding the power of your ideas, understanding the power of your innate connection, what you're connected to, and understanding that you can actually make a life of that, you know? So let's fast forward to now. I'm speaking to you. I'm overseeing that business that they began, Jones and Jones. I'm taking it another generation. What a blessing, what an honor, right? I'm doing it in the best way that I can. Um, but I'm also able to explore, like you said, some of the other hats, which are directly connected back to the experiences that I was having as a child and throughout
Mm.
childhood. And my goal now is all about connecting these worlds, connecting people, connecting culture, connecting brands, and always kind of really staying close to what community is feeling and thinking. And so,
Mm.
yeah, that's day to day kind of where things are right now, and what I'm focused on, and why this conversation I think is so important.
Yeah. Great. I mean, you said a lot there. My mind is going in so many different places,
Yeah,
but I
yeah,
know we wanted to talk a bit. I think broadly we're calling it like personal branding, but it is something so much deeper than that. But,
yes,
something that you kind of touched on was you are the amalgamation of all of these different things.
yeah.
So when you think about personal branding, like how do you take everything and turn it into a thing, like where
Yeah,
it's like,
yeah,
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 this is who I am, when in
yeah,
reality I am all of these things. I
yeah,
am
man.
such a complexity. So what is personal branding? What does that look like? What does it mean to you?
To me, it's not as scientific as a lot of people make it, but you do have to be intentional about the discovery. And just like you said, if I say the word like word map, does that ring a bell? Right? These
Yeah.
like You know, you see the central thing, but then there's these offshoots. I think that's what it is. I tell everyone, if there is one thing you do um, that I think is so beneficial, it's to take out a white sheet and just start writing down all the things that move you.
Mm.
They don't have to add like up. They don't have to make sense together yet, but literally just take the pen and as it comes, write it down. That could be science, gaming, writing. I'm a green thumb. I love getting my hands in the earth, gardening. Like, I don't care what it is, but as we talk about finding the personal brand and how everything interconnects, that is the piece that is foundational. That at the very beginning, you do that, it will start to open up some thinking and
Mm.
direction. Also, what it will do is you'll write all these things that fire you up, that light you up. That's what I mean. Like, write the things that you're like, if I get a chance to do this, I'm lost in it for the afternoon.
Yeah.
Those things.
Okay.
Once those things are written down, you can also start to go, how many of them do I do in my day to day right now
Mm.
with the career that takes me an hour and a half to get to, an hour and a half to get back? Like, are any of these things in that world at all? And if they are, great. If they're not, that's also a really great thing to understand. For me, I think personal branding is like it legitimately is who we are and how we show up. You know, the list is so critical because it's such a easy free way to understand where does our web interconnect.
Mm.
And I did that like very early. I would do things like that, and I realized that my list had things like sports, writing, creativity, media, you know, creating things, seeing them to fruition, people. You know, there's all these different things that were there. Marketing, um, advertising, just things that I just thought were interesting. You know, nature, comfort. The thing is that the journey is long, right? So you're not gonna interact with every single one of those things immediately. But there are ways as you're going along in the journey and you're making decisions, decisions on employment, decisions on companies, decisions on entrepreneurship, starting a new project. All those decisions, if you weigh it against the list, that keeps you kind of in the framework, right? Or if the list is always up, then every decision I make, I can glance at the list, be like, yo, am I in check? Am I in check? Because I did the list, you know what I'm saying? And like the list was all of the things that light me up. So I feel like even if we're not going to do every single thing on the list needs to be a part of our life. So we know, like,
Mm.
are we lit? Are we lit? Or are we not lit? You know what I'm
Yeah.
saying? Like, for
Yeah.
real, are we lit? Because what if one thing the pandemic showed me, it was like, we really need to be lit
Yeah.
to see the way.
Yeah.
If we're not
I
lit, it's dark. You know what I'm saying? And so I'm like, I keep adding to my list because we evolve, right? What I thought was lit me up 10 years ago may not light me up in the same way now, and that's okay. So things can be erased off the list or crossed off, but they should stay there because it's like that was us. That was the evolution of us. But man,
yeah.
if anything, you know, if anything kind of came to me after the pandemic, it was like, yeah, you know, with the way that things are changing all around us for things we don't have control over, We
Mm.
need to start tapping into the things we do have control over. And those things are the list. This list doesn't need to just be personal branding.
Yeah.
This list can be life things. It could be partnership things. It could be friendship things. It's like this is what lights me up from all these avenues. My friend circles, my business circles, my whatever. So yeah, I think personal branding is the decision to or not to be lit based on the list. And if we're not, then your personal brand will be dictated to you in the form of whatever some entity wants you to do. You will move with that as opposed to being on the offensive and using
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
lit list to be like, well, here's what I need to be living out my stuff in the best way possible. Whether I'm working for your company or I'm doing this on my own, these are the things that matter to me.
Yeah. I think, this metaphor just, I think blew a couple people's minds right now. It's like, am I lit? It gives new definition to the term.
Yes,
And
yes,
I think, how you opened up by talking about this level of intentionality. Sometimes,
yes,
like in our minds, I know what I like, I know what I dislike. But when we're intentional, writing it all down, when I'm looking every day, it's like these are the things that light me up. And how you
right.
phrased it, I think was so beautiful. It's like when I am lit up, it guides my path. Right now, so many of us are going through the path of life without
Fact,
being lit. So how do we see where we're going? We're aimlessly going
facts.
through the dark, just reaching
Or
out. Is this the right place? Is this the right place?
or
Yeah.
someone else is leading us because they're lit. They're
Mm.
lit. So they're like, hold my hand, I'll take you there. Right. And you know what?
Yeah.
Yeah, sometimes we do need to be led. But like, is your light my light? Is your what lights you up, what lights me up? So and if there's more lit people moving around, there's more light. So everybody
Mm.
can see a little bit better. So it's like, this is kind of, and it's funny because we've had the pre-chats, and I just want to say to everybody in the chat right now, this culture check thing has me lit up right now. I think you can see, right? Because it's getting me talking about some things that really matter to me. And I want to just shout out the entire team. You know what I mean? Because both, Nathan and Julia have, really prepared this discussion for me, like just in terms of us getting in this headspace of what we wanted to chat about. And it had me thinking. We didn't know how it was going to start or be, but now it's unfolding because we've been intentional
Yeah.
about what we're trying to do. But I want to say, man, this conversation about the list, and if if we do nothing else, it will provide some clarity in the next steps and what we want to
Yeah.
be doing. The thing is that we're in tough times. Money have to met. You know what I'm saying? So, like, for those in the chat who might not understand what I said,
Yeah.
money has to be made, right? We gotta pay bills, yes, but very quickly, and I think a lot of us have either been close to this or in some way, whether it's directly or through someone else. Life can change very quickly. The woman that was the force and leading force around Jones and Jones was my mother, who sadly passed away from brain cancer December of 2020. We got the news in 2019. We heard a year and a half at max. Okay.
Mm.
That for me was, and still to this day, is crushing. It's crushing. Okay. And I say this to say there are things that can come our way where you literally have absolutely no control over it. It is coming, and you must figure out how you're going to deal with that. Luckily, my brother and I were side by side with her
Mhm.
as she took her final breath. And I say this to say, being a part of that scenario, yeah, I've heard what it feels like. I've heard people talk about it, but something definitely happens when you're in that space through a transition.
Mhm.
I want to tell you what happened to me after that. Um, and it still plays out to this day. But it made me realize how final this thing called life can be. And it made me ask myself even more deeply, which is the gift, I think, of being a part of that moment, is how do I want to spend it? How do I want to spend it? Do I want to be doing things that make me feel lit up, that make me feel like I'm contributing to the days and to everything I'm around in a way that is so deeply fulfilling that it's worth pursuing? That moment really, really kind of said to me, you know, I'm not moving with the urgency. And I say urgency, but like, I think the word I'm looking for is like, am I really giving my heart the credit it deserves? The things I desire, the things I connect to, am I really leaning in? Or am I kind of on the surface and allowing, other lit scenarios to be
Mhm.
guiding? And so I think, this personal branding thing is not something that I think people should overthink, but it is something that people should go, am I stepping out into the world every day um, in my truest form, aligning with the things that excite me the most?
Mhm.
If I'm not, that's okay. But it is a choice that we're making. You know what I'm saying? Like
Mhm.
it's a choice we're making to be like, yeah, I either don't want to try to tap in because that's like I don't want to find out certain things. I don't want to get too deep. You know what I'm saying? I just want to stay right here. That's okay, but it's a choice. And as we see what's happening in society, we're gonna be led if you're not in tune. So yeah, what is everyone's personal brand? It's different. Can you live that personal brand out within a company every day being employed? Yeah, you can if you want to. When you're going to like the personal quarterly reviews or with your management or boss or whatever, like, are you bringing the lit list?
Mhm.
I mean, I would be impressed as a manager if someone brought their lit list. And as we're talking about how they've performed and what they want for their goals in the future, having the lit list to be like, hey, so yeah, I know we're talking about future things and blah, blah. I was thinking the company could use a special project and I'd be down to start it. Here's my list of things that light me up. This would be one of them. I'd be a more engaged employee. I'd be like, I think we could do something. It's the decision like, are we, do we want to tap into that or do we not? And the things that we find out while we're tapping in, are we prepared to pursue them?
Mhm. I think lit list. I think everyone is gonna walk away from this call remembering lit list. What is on my lit list? Am I honoring my lit list? That was something you kind of touched on there. It's like now that I've created this thing, is it collecting dust? Do I care enough about myself, or as you said, like honoring my heart to actually uphold my lit list? Or am I just letting it sit there? It's fascinating. You talk about, in the workplace, when I show up with my lit list, this is what's going to light me up. Why do you think some of us don't honor our lit list? Or do we not know what's on our list? Or do we know and are scared to chase after those things? What do you think is like a common barriers that prevent us from really going all in?
Yeah, so um, you know, I want to thank you, Nathan, for being such a dope guide to this conversation, man. Like you're good, man. No, for real. I gotta give you the props. You're very
Thank
good
you.
at this, and I want to see you continue doing this because I think this culture check, I think this whole thing concept is so dope, and I see you doing this on a larger scale in front of like a live audience. I'm like manifesting a lit list for you, right? You know, like because I really think you're good at this, and it's a special talent. So thank you because you're allowing me to tap in and whatever. The
Thank you.
question,
Appreciate it.
yeah, the question about look, yes, all of those things. Is it fearful to pursue the lit list? 100%. Because some of those things might be entrepreneurial endeavors, or it might be ways of approaching your business and company that you've never thought of before, like or the company you work for, or whoever, or it might be considerations about friend circles, like whatever it is, you have to be honest with it and say, what are these things that light me up? And nothing is dumb on the lit list. It's not
Mm.
like, oh, I like to knit. What am I gonna do with knitting? Like, I don't diss the lit list. Like, don't diss it. Just write it
Yeah.
and let it flow and come back to it. Because what you're gonna see on the lit list is you're gonna see a bunch of different things, and they might not seem super connected at the time,
Mm.
but there might be interconnection points there that you realize over time from seeing it. Because I'll tell you, my list, I look at it once, I don't see certain things. I come away from it, I go back to it based on my experiences in the world,
Mm.
conversations I'm having. Now that I have a lit list, I'm kind of like it's always in the back of my head. Someone says something to me while I run into them at the grocery store. Hey, Jesse, by the way, blah, blah. Wait, what? Oh, maybe we should connect because now you're remembering some things that you might not have put together, but now you're out in the world with like some ammo.
Yeah.
You've got some things, right? So is it that people don't want to pursue the lit list? Yes. Is it a milestone to create the lit list? Yes. Is another milestone to like get into it and actually, yes, that's the evolution of the
Yeah. Yeah.
milestone. And then you're like, okay, oh wow, maybe I should start doing something with that's the next level. So making the lit list is still right because how it impacts you, you never know. If you
Yeah.
at least did the list and you're adding to it point by point over the days and the years, cool. But if you want to take it further, yeah, that's on you. What I would always go back to is that analogy of us making our way through. If only the person at the front has the lamp and is lit, then you're rolling with them
Yeah.
through the darkness. You're rolling with them. You are
Yeah.
rolling with them. That could be parents, spouse, friend, co-worker, whoever. You're rolling with them. Okay. If you do not have a lamp and that lamp goes out, it's dark.
Mm.
So I feel like tapping into the lit list in any capacity has a little flame that gets lit up. That if that light that we've been following that doesn't really feel harmonious, and it might not be a person that we're following, it might just be like a feeling of like, I'm just going. I'm gonna just go, right?
Mm.
Because I don't want to fail, so I'm not gonna take a big leap. I'm just gonna keep going. And that is a success in its own right. However, the winds and the sails can move you, right? And you don't know kind of what, but if we're tapping into that list, I'll say this too, it takes a bit of time to do that. So you might feel like you're not moving as you do that. because you're staying
Mhm.
still now. You're like, okay, I need to just check in for a bit. I need to make my list. I need to figure out what. So, we are talking before the call, Julie and I were just talking about kind of where I feel like I am in life right now when it comes to this ongoing list and how I'm moving through. And we talked about this arrow or like the slingshot type experience where you're pulling back and back and back and people are still moving, but you're like, nah, I gotta be in this. I need to gather resources. I need to think about my brand. I need to think about my purpose and what I'm connected to. And you're like, man, but these people keep moving. Like they're walking, and I feel like I'm in this strenuous stretching of understanding who I am and trying to tap into it all. But man, it's this pullback,
Mm.
right? And when you let that go, though, and you're lit, because you've been like, okay, and sometimes it feels like, okay, now I'm gonna go. Oh no, 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 and you're pulling back still because you got more work to do. You're in the lab, and so it's all of this, right? It's this, and I feel like I'm constantly in this with some let goes, ping, right? And I'm like, okay, all right, we got. But then as I do that, I'm like, okay, let's go back into the lab. Let's make sure that we're in tune still at this next level. So I feel like, yeah, it's a choice we're making. One thing
Yeah.
the pandemic showed me is that make the choices for you, or the choices will be made for you.
Mm.
Decide if you're good with whatever the choices are going to be made. Cool, no problem, no shunning that. That's good. That's your choice. But if you've got some things that you realize, nah, man, this is my heart's comfort. This, and not like I'm scared to do something else. Like really truly ask, like, is it comfort or is it like settling because you don't want to try something out of the
Mm.
ordinary? Right? Those are two different feelings, that's what the pandemic really showed me. It was like, yo, it's gonna be a hard road to do this, Jesse, to continue to live off your passions. But you can always do something else if that doesn't work.
Yeah.
Give your heart a try. You know what I'm saying? Like
Mm.
that's the space I'm in. And that's why I talk about personal branding with so much like heart and passion. Cause I'm like, is your heart worth it? If it is, great. Try something new. You know what I mean? And try to tap into you. But yeah, it's a question. And depending on how you decide, it's up to us.
This all this talk about, light, and why we don't commit to our lit list reminds me of the quote from Marianne Williamson. You probably heard it, the one that says, "Our deepest fear is not that we're inadequate. Our
Yeah.
deepest fear is that we are powerful beyond measure. It is our light, not our darkness, that frightens us most." We
Mm,
ask ourselves, who am I to be brilliant, to be gorgeous, to be talented, to be fabulous? Actually, who are you not to be? You are a child of God. Your playing small does not serve the world. There is nothing enlightening about shrinking so that others won't feel insecure around you. We are all meant to shine, right? And so just keeping that in mind, that we are often all scared
100%.
of our letting our own light shine. And we consciously, but when we do it, we give permission to everyone else around us to let their light shine. But when we're around a bunch of people who are scared to let our light shine, we just reinforce that. And so just being around other people with their lit list is another way to make sure that we are upholding that list in our lives.
I love the way you brought that like full circle because you're so right. And it is about having the right framework around us, right? The people around us. Like if you're around people with the lit list and everyone's committing to these lit lists and checking in and on these culture chat meets. All right, like how's everyone's list? You don't always have to share your list publicly. You
Yeah.
can if you want with some friends. Like, I mean, it's such a it's a decision. I think the people in the chat right now are here because this matters to them. And I think, we don't have to be entrepreneurs to be tapping into the lit list. You can do this in your companies, in the places you work, in the places you gather. But yes, you are also free to start something,
Yeah.
and create something. It is kind of within us to do so. It should be our gift to ourselves to create and to honor that life.
So what are your thoughts on, maybe we have different versions of ourselves. I have my at home with my family, with my friends, I have my professional self. How do you view kind of your authentic self versus your private self versus who you post online? And how do I bring in my lit list so that I can be authentically me in all these spaces, but maybe at work I need to be a bit more guarded. I can't be so lit at work, or maybe I can't be so lit over in these places. How do you find the balance between your environment, your context, or do you find that once you have that lit list and it's burning bright inside of you, you don't contain it. You just shine everywhere that you go. Like what
Love
unpack
it.
that for
Love
yeah.
it. Love that question. Great question. It's a journey, first of all. But what I will say is that the sooner we get the lit list done, the sooner the GPS starts to give you some alternative routes.
Hmm.
So, like, we're on a journey right now, and the GPS is kind of taking us in this way. But the lit list gives you context that you can plug into it. And now it starts to show you, oh, by the way, you're on this route, but this one here will get you a little bit closer to your destination in a time that is more. Or, by the way, there's some things happening over here you might want to be aware of. So take this route. The lit list allows us to make decisions that are more reflective of where
Hmm.
we are lit up than not.
Yeah.
So that's the thing, is that it doesn't matter how we've been going to this point. Once you've got the guideline and the list that you're adding to all the time, it's like, oh, so next time there's a promotion up for something in the company, or there's new job opportunities, I'm like looking at them differently now.
Yeah, yeah. So I
I'm
think
I'm approaching them differently now because I have this added information about how I want to move.
yeah, yeah. So like I think what could happen to some of us is because I have so many different versions of myself, I become untethered. Like who is the real me? What is the real version? And so if I'm able to hold on to, okay, this is the core of who I am, what I am about. So when I show up like this in this context or I'm still rooted in the authentic self. I still have that foundation so that in this context, if I choose to show up in that way because it serves me or in this way over here, I can always find my way back home. And a lot of us, we're just so used to shifting in different directions that, it's so easy to become disconnected from what is that real thing.
100%. Very hard to manage.
Mhm.
That's hard to manage. And I know a lot of us go through that in corporate. You know what I'm saying? I've been there. Like I didn't just start as an entrepreneur. I worked many years in marketing, different agencies and corporate. And it's hard to, in a scenario like that, to really be who you are. However, the times are now that companies need to find people with strong personal brands and strong presence that allow them to come in and lead teams, or lead organization in different ways. So I feel like this is the one of the best times to be tapping into a lit list and approaching our decision making with that list
Mhm.
as kind of like our guide to conversation. You know what I mean? If I pulled out, if someone pulled out a lit list as I was about to hire them or talk to them, and they said, "Listen, I've spent a considerable amount of time on this list. In terms of what lights me up, and I thought it was important for me to bring it to this interview because I want you to know who I am and what I stand for." I've also spoken to a bunch of people about this list, right? Who play different roles in my life. And here are some of the things that they've said about how I show up in these ways. And I wanted to have this as discussion points for us as we talk about, what you're looking for in your company and what you'd be looking for from the people who kind of light things up here.
All
I'd be
right, so
like, I'd be like, I'd be like, okay, I'm listening. You know what I mean?
yeah, yeah.
Sorry,
All
go ahead.
right. So, okay, question for you. So first, I just want to put out, I know we're coming up on the hour, so I just want to put it out in the group. If you have a question that you want to ask, put it in the chat, put it in the Q&A function so we can get those off. While those are coming in, to kind of touch on what you just said. So in building this lit list, what are like questions that I can ask myself beyond like, does this light me up, that can help me kind of refine or guide me in this journey to really flesh this list out? Like, what can I be asking? What am I looking for to really determine this list?
I would say the first question is something like, what lights me up? What are the types of activities, the types of things that unforced I am interested in or like to do?
Hmm.
I think it starts there. Interested in or physically like to do. I would start there. I think some other questions to ask though are like, you know, what moves me?
Hmm.
What are the types of things and um, what are those things that I believe in, that I want to find out answers to, that I want to contribute to? What is that? What spaces are those? Um, what type of people do I wish to connect with? What are their characteristics? Are they uplifting? Are they caring? Are they trusting? Um, you know, those types of questions. Um, what am I fearful of?
Hmm.
What do I fear? I would put that down too, um, on the lit list.
Yeah.
Because to understand the fears is to also be super, super lit.
Yeah.
It's to be like, oh, I'm so in tune that I can also qualify that. And I think those things help, man, because to know the fears, to know the vision, to know the dreams and the aspirations, but also the fears, is to be real about it.
Yeah.
And then at the end of it, it's like, yo, am I worth um, striking the match and potentially lighting a flame on any of these things on this list? That's the
Hmm.
question at the end of the day. Do I think I am worth walking around with this list when I'm trying to go and date and meet new people? I bring it to the dates too. Like for real. I'd be like, listen, you're trying to get to know me, right? You're trying to get to know me, right? You want to understand me and where my passions lie. Okay, I've done that work.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
also know on here what I fear. So let's have some real open dialogue around that in terms of how the lit list impacts our lives across the board. You
Yeah.
know what
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
mean?
All right.
Yeah.
So even taking lit lists to your Tinder profile and everything.
No, listen, man. I personally believe it would cut out a lot of the um, time
The
and
noise, yeah.
energy that we spend around people that might not be aligned with us. I think it would
Mm.
clear up a whole lot if many of us walk with lit lists and we're like, hey, by the way, before we even go any further, here, anything on here interconnect with you? You know, it would help us choose our careers. It would help us choose like everything. Like I said, when you're in the forest and you're with the guide and the guide has the light, you are following that light to get out the forest.
Yeah.
If the guide's light goes out though, and you don't have light.
Yeah. All right, we got a couple questions here. So, you had your slingshot or bow and arrow analogy. So, in those moments of being stretched, that can feel so challenging, that can feel like I'm about to snap, and you just keep being pulled back. What strategies or practices do you have in place to help you through those periods? I can say for my, during those periods when I'm in my stretch, one of the biggest things that I've learned is documenting the process. So journaling, writing down like what am I experiencing? How am I feeling as I'm going through it? Because then you start to be able to look back to see, oh, that's where I was. This is where I am now. Because so quickly during the hard times, it feels like they last forever. But then when you're out of those times, you forget about it, right? But the more that you're able to document what you're going through, document how you're feeling about it, then that I serves me. I can go back to that and be like, oh, I've been in this exact place before. Here's how I dealt with it. Here's how I got over it. Right. And I'm able to remind myself. I think the biggest challenge that a lot of us have is that we're quick to forget. We forget the hard times, we forget what we've gone through. And so we end up repeating the same cycles over and over again. Next time we face hardship, we feel like the world is over. We feel like we can never overcome. We feel like we don't have the skills to do this or that. When in reality, we've gone through hard times time and time and time again. In fact, every single hardship that you have faced in your life, you have overcome get to the point where you are today. But yet we forget that. And so every time I'm being stretched, I go back to the archives. When was I stretched before? How did I overcome? How was I able to maneuver through that? And so to me, that's a big way in how I overcome those stretch periods. I answered it for you, Jesse. Don't worry.
Yeah, I'm sorry about that, man. I think like I'm having some internet troubles over here, but yeah, yeah, I'm glad I'm
No worries.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
All right. Okay, got two more questions here. So when you have a multifaceted professional who wants to showcase their different interests and services through a website, what is your best piece of advice to find cohesion to avoid looking like that person does it all? So I guess like how do I take my variety of interests and paint like a cohesive picture with it that doesn't feel too scattered is how I'm interpreting that.
So is that basically like is the question there? I'm trying to build what was it like build a website that basically says
I
like the
think so.
services? Right.
Yeah, yeah. So it's like, okay, this is all of who I am to kind of present me to the world, but so it doesn't look too scattered.
Oh
It
yeah.
looks cohesive. It looks like it's a coherent person and not just some person who's like, oh, they just do a whole bunch of stuff.
I love that question. And I think what I would suggest there is um trial and error it. Like do the framework of it in the list form. Here's the tree of here's me and here are the services that I cover. Um, and then see how people are responding to it. First of all, I love the fact that someone is talking about building their own website and their own web space of like, this is my home on the internet and where you can find me. Because if any of these platforms ever go down, or they happen to go away. We think of Instagram as something that's kind of like in our lives and will always be here, but it wasn't always here. And it might not always be here. And so if our business and our brand is connected to that only, then it goes where they go. So
Mhm.
to have your own website for you, just in terms of who you are and the interests that you have, is a huge, 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 huge thing that I think we all should have. Every one of us should have our name.com, especially in this digital age that we're going into. That website can always be updated and adapted. So put it up, have it out there, have your digital card that you can connect with people on. If you are the seamstress master of seamstry or knitting, have your web space that says that. Hey, I knit and I'm lit. You know what I'm saying? like like get at me, reach out. If you're in part of the knitting community, I'm out here and I this is what I do. Oh, by the way, I can do custom, or I can consult with you on this in terms of what you might be looking for. Like, here's what we were told to do since birth. These blinders are invisible blinders, but I'm putting my hands up because it makes it real for us to understand. These have been on our faces since we were born. It tells us where you come from, what you should expect for your life. It tells you you're male, you should do this. It tells you you're black, you should, all of these things. And so what I think we stand a chance to do is just drop them and look around outside of those limitations that sometimes, for good reason, people around us that loved us tried to direct us in certain places and say things to us because they wanted us to have safety in life and all these things. I think we're in a time now where we're seeing that everything is kind of opening up. Work ways are opening up. The way society is moving is opening up. Um, I think we're talking about personal branding today. Everybody should have their web domain. If you don't have your domain, your name.com, just go get it. It's going to be $25 or something a year, but get it, because that's where the lit list can take shape. It's the place on the web that you can start to cultivate like what the next act is going to be. You know what I mean? Because like I said, I'm going to go back to this analogy. If the guide is the only person for with the light, you're holding on to them and you're going where they go. Where they go, though, might not be where you want your life to go. So as long as we got some light with us, I think it helps kind of navigate how we build out this brand. And it doesn't have to be the same for everybody. It just has to feel right for you.
All right, excellent. So with our last little bit of time, I want to ask this question. So besides the lit list, what's the best way to start when it comes to creating that authentic personal brand? So I guess we do the hit lit list. Like where do we go from here? How do we start creating this authentic personal brand?
I think only we're the only people who can say how authentic we believe things are. So I think that's a barometer and a measurement that only you can determine. But the list is so critical. Like to me, the list is the foundation of everything. And then the next step is like, how do you want to, you know, talk about that list? How do you want to put that list into the world? So
Mm,
we've done the work of uncovering things in the list. Now we're at the talk about it stage or the engagement stage around this list. Are you taking your list to go meet with other people who might be doing some lit lists too? And you're all sitting down at lunch talking about, well, what was on yours and how are you thinking about, pursuing that? So I think it's like there's an uncover it stage, there's a talk about it stage, and a let's workshop this. Let's take it into different spaces, see how it's landing,
mm.
right? Or, talking about this list to other people. Hey, you've been my friend for 10, 15 years. What do you think about this list? Is this like me? When you look at this list, does this feel like me? Because this felt like me, but you know me too. So how does this feel? Then it allows you to go, oh, wow, they see that too. Or they didn't know that about me and they've known me this long. So the talk about it stage is that stage where you can kind of start to workshop the list and see how it lands in public. And then it's like, oh, there are some things that might have been like, oh, something's caught. Like some people were like, yeah, no, Nathan, like I see that. I think, yeah, that's interesting, man. Like, okay, now we gotta be about the list. Now we gotta ignite the flame a little bit so that we're not just with the guide with their
Yeah.
light. We got a little one here too that we could say, hey, I got some just in case that goes out. So I think it's like lit list, first thing, uncover it. That's the uncovering stage. That's the like we're learning things, we're seeing things. Okay, this makes sense to me. Talk about it is the next stage, how we survey it, how we kind of like, get some response to it and test it in the real world. That could be where we do our website. We get a bio written up for us. Hey, my name is Nathan and this is who I am. This is my contribution to the world. I like to do these things. Connect with me if you're into any of these things. And then you take that out into the world and talk about it. Now you got your digital card. You're like, hey, yeah, that was a nice conversation. Hit me up. Boom. Oh, shoot. Nathan's got a site. Nathan's got some direction in terms of the areas. This is beyond Nathan 9 to 5. This is Nathan 24/7. Okay. And now it's like, all right, now we can be about it. Now someone hits you up now because they did a Google search and they're like, man, I didn't know that you were the knit man. Like you knit and I need some sweaters. I need an order of 20. Are you able to do those? Like now we've gone from knitting was something I kept private and closeted to someone's asking me for an order. It's that close, but it doesn't happen unless we put it out, So I think like that's really where it is. We think these connection points are so far away. It's literally putting yourself into the universe to play the game where you might get a pitch to swing at. And then it's like, oh, I'm really playing now. So yeah, and that has happened to me numerous times in my life to this point where you don't know where that opportunity is going to come from. And the mere fact that you're in the game, you get a pitch to swing at. You know what I'm saying? It can happen fast.
Yeah. All right. Well, I told y'all we were bringing through a heavy hitter, right, to talk about this heavy topic. So, honestly, thank you so much for this amazing conversation. This was fantastic. I think there was just so many nuggets for us to walk away with. I'm so grateful for this conversation. I'm gonna write this down because this lit me up. So I got to put this on my list and unpack this. This was fantastic. Seeing a lot of activity in the chat, a lot of people excited about this conversation. So thank you to you, Jesse. Thank you to everyone who was able to come out. We shared some links in there on September 18th at 8 a.m. We have our morning check-in. So it's a great place for a lit list accountability. So coming through and sharing your ideas, sharing your stories, and we all have an evening session. I believe it's the following week. I forget what that day is, but it's the Wednesday at 6 p.m. the following Wednesday. And so these are great ways for us to continue to build that community, to support one another, to be around other lit people, to keep us inspired and motivated. So, Jesse, thank you so much for your time. Thank you to all of you. And we really hope that you continue to, all of you, engage in this community and continue to be a part of what we do.
Can I just say
Yes,
one more
your
thing?
final word. Yeah.
I just want to say thank you so much to you, Julia, the entire team, Culture Check, for doing this Culture Chats. This came at a good time for me as well. I want to say that the energy in the chat, the questions. Thank you for anyone who spent the time watching this, either live or if there's pieces of this that get shared after. If you are taking this in, appreciate your time. I will also say that I think this needs to happen on a live format in person. I think I would love to do this dialogue with you live with people in person and connecting.
I'm
I think that's
here.
something that I'd love to manifest. So let's put that in the world. But thank you once again. This inspired me today. It gave me a little kick when I also needed it. You know what I'm saying? So we're not eternally lit. You know, we go through these hills and valleys, and I think, you know, things come at a great time. And I just appreciate all of you for the energy that you brought today. And like, it really helped kind of give me another little bit of like, you know, pep in the step to just keep pushing towards these things that we're all collectively talking about. So big up Culture Check for that.
All right. Thank you very much. I hope you all have a wonderful rest of your day and stay lit, everybody.